Okay, welcome boys to the emergency frame chasers reaction video to the AMD 2022 reveal Zen 4 keynote, whatever you want to call it. It happened a few hours ago, just got home. And I did this one offline today because I wanted to collect my notes, collect my thoughts. Now, first things first, if you are new to the channel, I just want to put this up front here that my channel tends to focus on high frame rate esport gaming and high fidelity single player gaming, very high roller type stuff. Okay, so when it comes to power consumption and cost of platform, etc., we take into account those things, but they are not the main focus of this channel. Here we're really focusing on just sheer performance numbers of platforms. Okay, we have a golden rule list on our channel here, and golden rule number one is nothing ever changes. Now, just keep that in the back of your head as we go along through this video here today. Now, we're going to start with RDNA 3. So RDNA 3, they didn't really show much. They showed one game. There's not really an FPS counter there. Nothing really happened, right? Why did they even bother announcing it? Now, if you actually go back to when they revealed RDNA 2, we did a live reaction on that one, right? But one of the things that I said back then, when Lisa Su, when she talked about RDNA 2, I said she does not look confident in that product, because you can tell when she's talking about the Zen CPU, she's glowing, she's happy, right? Her demeanor is very confident. When she talks about anything regarding the Radeon group, what happens? This happens. What's she saying here?
It looks absolutely wonderful, doesn't it?
Do I gotta zoom in on her face here? Right? That, once again, she doesn't want to talk about RDNA. She doesn't want to talk about it. It is not the same luster as it was with the Zen 4 reveal. Okay, this is, nobody's even clapping.
Now,
it's bad, boys. It's bad.
We are feeling great about how RDNA 3 looks in the labs, and I can't wait to tell you more about it when we launch later this year.
It's bad. It's gonna be bad, boys. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I'm not saying the performance is gonna be bad. I'm just saying she's talking about the RDNA 3 architecture the same way she talked about the RDNA 2 one, and RDNA 2 did not pan out very well. It is a big mess when it comes to drivers and consistent performance across games. So I don't think, when it comes to the next generation of graphics cards, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a dumpster fire. But let's move on to the CPUs. Okay, now when it comes to the Zen 4 CPUs here, we're going to I'm going to show you some pictures and some slides. We're going to kind of go through it. Then I'm going to go through the fine print at the end here, right? Now, how did they get this 29% number here? Well, if you actually take a calculator and you go 5700 megahertz, which is what they're saying is their single core boost, right, divided by 4900 megahertz, which was the Zen 3 maximum boost, you have 16% here plus that 13% IPC. Oh, I just messed it up, but that's where your 29, 16 plus 13 equals 29, right? So one key thing to remember here, this is in Cinebench, and things that scale with IPC and clock speed linearly. You can't just take 13% IPC and 16% clock speed and spit out a number and say that it scales. All they're saying here is that the total theoretical performance uplift is 29%. So keep that in mind as we go forward here. Okay, the first slide here. This one is probably going to be the most telling of where the performance kind of really is going to land, right? Now, okay, if you go to the fine print where they show what memory they used for the test systems, you can see that they used DDR5 6000 C30 for the Ryzen systems and the Intel system. They do not tell you what memory they used for the 5950X. That's big information that's missing there. So you can't take these numbers and draw any conclusion from them without knowing what speed of DDR4 they used for the Ryzen 5000. Now, there's one benchmark here that doesn't really care about memory speed too much. Counter-Strike. CSGO. This game fits in the cache almost completely, so that's why you don't see a performance benefit to it going from a 5800X to the 3D chip. It's the same, right? So, the same kind of goes for memory speed in this game as well. So this 13% is a combination of that IPC and the clock speed that we're seeing. So the true performance uplift that you're going to see over Zen 3 here is going to be this 13% in my prediction, because this is kind of the only game that doesn't care. So you have to go under the assumption that they used like 3200 C16 or God knows what memory they used on the Ryzen 5000 series, right? So when you see this Shadow of the Tomb Raider 35%, they're basically taking the worst of one platform and putting it with the best of another platform, right? They've already told you that 6000 megahertz memory DDR5 is a 1-to-1 ratio on the fabric clock, right? So you're going to see unnatural gains. For anybody that actually remember what I said at the beginning of the video here, this channel is for kind of esports enthusiasts that kind of tune their systems, right? If you are a tuner and you're looking for realistic performance, you're gonna have this 13%, I'm gonna be assuming here. Now the Intel slide, this one's next, right? Borderlands and CSGO, what do you see? You see a tie, right? Shadow of the Tomb Raider, this one is kind of disingenuous because they're testing a 16-core CPU against an 8-core CPU. It is what it is. The E-cores don't count, right? Shadow of the Tomb Raider will scale with as many cores as you throw at it, right? That's why they use that benchmark. And it does not scale with E-cores, right? So you're seeing a 14% gain in a game, and for all we know, they left the E-cores on, which conflicts with the schedule. There's a whole cluster of mess here that could have been happening, right? Again, what you really want to do is focus on the Counter-Strike one, because the Counter-Strike one eliminates all of their favoritism away from them, if you want to know what I'm saying, because all it cares about is IPC and clock speed. The memory, the E-cores, and the core count are all taken out of the equation. It only cares about that single thread IPC boost, right? Now, the other concerning thing here is CSGO has a -1%. This game actually works better with PBO on because it's going to find that single core and then use it. So this benchmark here is showing the 7950X at 5.7 gigahertz in CSGO. I don't know what the stock 12900K is, 5.2, 5.3 single or something like that. So the Zen chip is clocking almost 400 megahertz faster here, and it has -1, which shows how much more IPC Alder Lake really has, which Alder Lake does have more IPC. Now, when it comes to professional benchmarks, this is not a surprise. The 16-core Ryzen CPU is always going to be better at professional workloads. It has 16 big cores, right? The little ones don't really do shit, right? So if you're in the market for a professional workstation, obviously you get the 16 core, right? That thing is going to be a goat. Okay, so to summarize the IPC versus clock speed difference between Alder Lake and Zen 4 here, here's how it kind of looks, right? You have a 5.3 gigahertz 12900K, right? Then you have a 5.7 gigahertz. This is single, not all core, single and single, right? 7950X, single, right? This one has, oops. This one has 25 IPC, just an arbitrary number here. This one has 13 IPC. So if you actually take the clock speed and IPC of both of them, they tie. Performance is a tie. And this is theoretical single core scaling game CSGO. That's why it's a tie. It's basically the exact same. Where AMD lacks in the IPC, they made up for it with another 400 megahertz of clock speed over top of Intel, right? That's what's going on here, right? So you can pretty much say that they're going to perform identically in terms of single core performance. Okay, now we're going to cover a far more important topic for gamers, and that's going to be latency. Now, there's a lot of things that we can talk. I'm going to try and condense this down for you guys, but basically they said 6000 C30 results in about 63 nanoseconds of latency, which is basically the exact same as untuned Zen 3, right? Now, we're going to leave Intel out of the equation here. We're only going to talk about AMD and what their numbers are saying, but the 5950X with like a 3600 C14 XMP kit, no kind of manual tuning, will be around 65 nanoseconds, right? Now, what they're saying here is Zen 4, or 7950X, right? With a 6000 C30 kit, XMP, will be around 63 nanoseconds. Now, here's the big elephant in the room here. When you tune this down to, let's say, 3800 C14 and you do all your sub timings, you can get it to maybe 54 or 55 nanoseconds, right? Which is fine. But if you are an esports player and you have a Zen 3 chip at 55 nanoseconds, what happens? The notorious AMD dips and the notorious 1% lows are gonna bite you in the ass. Now, AMD has already said that 6000 is the sweet spot for their fabric. So maybe you might get 6200, let's say. Maybe you might get C28, let's say. You might get maybe 57 nanoseconds. Okay, whatever. Let's just say best case scenario, you get 54 nanoseconds. The same as DDR4 B-die, which is almost impossible, right? But let's just say, for argument's sake, that you get 54 nanoseconds. You're back to square one, right? And what did we say at the beginning of the video? Nothing ever changes, right? If you have 54 nanoseconds on a chiplet architecture, what's going to happen? You're going to have those dips, the AMD dips, the 1% lows. You're going to have that giant cluster happen all over again. So as an esports player, you're going to be disgusted with the game, with how the game feels for you, right? Now, the caveat to all that. 3D V-cache. Right? The 5800X3D showed us that AMD can remove 1% low problem and dips with the 3D V-cache at 55 nanoseconds, which is what I tested in my video, right? So the 5800X3D at 55 nanoseconds I don't want to say did not, but it did not have that dip problem and crappy 1% lows. In fact, it performed very, very well, almost completely on par with the 12900K, right? So if AMD comes out with a 7800X3D, right, with 55 nanoseconds of tuned memory now, and the 1% low problem is gone, that's the one that you wait for. They're telling you right here, down to 63 nanoseconds. 63 nanoseconds equals dip, equals 1% low problem, equals chiplet problem. That's exactly, they're telling it to you right here. We have 63 nanoseconds, 55 at best. So nothing, the latency, the core-to-core latency and chiplet-to-chiplet latency are identical. Just because DDR5 is so much slower than DDR4 is, and right now with the current recording of this video in 2022, DDR4 BDI is significantly lower latency than DDR5, right? So we're back to square one here with Zen 4. Now you're gonna see actually the 5800X3D, it's probably gonna have better 1% lows than all of the Zen 4 chips. So here is how the landscape is going to look come the launch of Zen 4, in my opinion, right? The 12900K with DDR4 will still be the best for esport gaming because you can get it down to 39 nanoseconds with BDI, right? The 7950X, let's say at 55 nanoseconds. Guys, that's what? 16 nanoseconds less. That like people think of DDR4 as a disadvantage for the Intel platform. It is a massive advantage for esport games. Massive. This cannot be overstated, right? DDR5 is too slow for esport games at this current moment in time. Now 55 nanosecond 7950X probably be the best for single player high fidelity. Maybe. I don't know. We don't know yet, right? Because single player games are far less sensitive to that, right? Like if you benchmark a 5950X, maybe 20% of the titles will actually show up with a bad 1% low, right? Like Shadow of the Tomb Raider doesn't, Horizon, Death Stranding, you know, like the AMD titles, those games don't really care too much, right? So this, I'm gonna put this in brackets because I don't know yet. I'll test it, obviously, right? But if you're an esports player, you can completely ignore Zen 4 for now. Now, back to this keynote here. The biggest concern that I have here, this is a massive, so nobody saw this in their reaction videos, right? But check this out. So they use DDR5 6000 C30 on both platforms. That's fine, that's good. But they used a Radeon 6950 XT as their GPU of choice, and they say it right here. Smart access memory enabled. That is bad. That's really, here's why. When you are benchmarking CPUs, in order to benchmark them fairly, you have to an NVIDIA GPU. I've talked about this previously before, right? NVIDIA GPUs are platform agnostic. I'm not sure if that's the right word. They don't care about what platform they're using, right? AMD GPUs will perform significantly better on AMD CPUs with SAM enabled. So when you take the 6950 XT and you put it on a 12900K, you lose 10 to 20% performance right off the top. I mean, in comparison to an AMD CPU is what I'm saying. But you take 10 to 20% right off the top just because it's on an Intel platform. And they told you that they did that for these numbers. Right? You go back here to their Intel comparisons. Right? Oh, this is the AMD ones. Intel comparisons. So they're using SAM. SAM is on. So the AMD CPU is getting 10 to 20%. Well, they only showed 4 games, but if they're showing a -1% and a tie, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider with SAM on for the AMD CPU, that's a very, very, very disingenuous benchmark that AMD pulled here for this video. If it said 3090 Ti instead, that would have been, these numbers would have been much more legitimate, right? But because they used, I mean, it's in their right to do so. It's their product. It's their, I'm just saying, an unbiased benchmarker has to use an NVIDIA graphics card because it's not fair. An AMD graphics card will not perform as well in an Intel platform. It just won't, right? So the fact that they used 6,000 megahertz memory on the Intel platform, which it can go up to 7,000 already. So it's you got to be careful, boys. You got to be careful. Why are the benchmarks disingenuous? AMD is maxed out at 6,000. Intel is missing 1,000 megahertz. They can go to 7,000. 7,000 is quite difficult though. Let's say 6,600 is doable by all Intel chips. 6,600, right? So they're missing 600 megahertz. Right? AMD has SAM. Intel is missing SAM. It's disingenuous. Right? Now, even if they said that they turned SAM off, I would have been like, okay, at least it's turned off for both of them, right? At least then they would have only had 256 megs of access at a time or whatever. At least then it would have been more fair, right? But no. They put right here, smart access memory on in capital, on. So you can pretty much take this entire keynote and throw it out the window, boys. Always wait for third-party reviews. Don't even, anyone who talks about this shit on Twitter or YouTube or in Reddit forums saying AMD is the king and all this shit, this entire thing was completely disingenuous, guys. The entire thing was rendered completely useless only because of that smart access memory toggle. It was turned on. Nope. AMD wasn't showing you the performance of their CPU. They were showing you the performance of their platform. That's a big key that you have to take away. AMD was not comparing CPUs. They were comparing platforms, which is fine, but they need to be declaring that stuff, in my opinion. They need to be telling you that they're using an AMD ecosystem versus a non-AMD ecosystem. And you cannot say that that's fair. Anyway, boys, wait for my review, but I'm going to go ahead and say 5800 X3D will have better lows than base Zen 4. 12900K will still be faster because DDR4 latency. Then there we go. So this is my prediction for now. If you are interested in the AMD ecosystem and platform and you like the IO they have to offer and all that stuff, and you are any kind of competitive gamer, right? You have to wait for the Zen 4D 3D, Zen 43D, Zen 43D. You have to wait for the Zen 43D. I'm messed up. Anyway, boys, that's my prediction for today as of right now. And if you like the content, hit that subscribe button, do all that YouTube SEO stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment down below what you thought about the keynote, and I will see you guys in the next one. Talk to you later.